Henry Slaughter spent 60 years writing songs that millions sang in churches without ever knowing his name. And when he died in 2025, the tributes from Bill Gaither, Gloria Gaither, Mark Lowry, and David Phelps revealed something most fans had never considered. The man behind so much of gospel music's most beloved sound had been quietly shaping the art form since before many of its current worshipers were born. That distance between his influence and his public recognition is exactly where his story gets worth telling. Born January 9, 1927 in Roxborough, North Carolina, Slaughter grew up inside a devout Christian household where religion wasn't something the family went out to practice on Sundays. It was the air inside the house. His hands found the piano keys when he was still too small to reach the pedals comfortably, and what began as a child's instinct deepened over decades into one of the most distinctive voices in Christian music history. Nobody pushed him toward a career in gospel music. The calling arrived first, and the career followed behind it like a shadow that grows longer the further the day moves. Between 1958 and 1967, Slaughter moved through two of gospel music's most respected groups and left both of them different from how he found them. His years with the Weatherfords from 1958 to 1961 gave him a platform, and his time with the Imperials from 1964 to 1967 built a reputation that traveled faster than he did. The pianists who came into both groups after Slaughter had to reckon with the standard he left behind, which is one of the quieter ways that a musician's reach spreads through an industry without making headlines. He never described it that way. His colleagues did, usually after he'd already left the room. What the Gaither Homecoming series did for Slaughter and what Slaughter did for the Gaither Homecoming series is harder to separate than it might first appear. Bill and Gloria Gaither created that platform to accomplish something almost no outlet in Christian music had attempted before: gather gospel music's greatest living voices and document them performing together before time took those voices away. Slaughter wasn't merely a participant in that project. He was one of the reasons it carried the emotional weight it did. When he sat at that piano during homecoming sessions, other artists would look over at him mid-song and lose their composure entirely, tears arriving without warning or apology. Audiences described the experience not as entertainment, but as something closer to worship itself, an encounter rather than a concert. And Slaughter's playing consistently sat at the center of those moments without demanding any credit for it. His songwriting ran alongside his performing career the entire time, and the two informed each other in ways that are audible if you listen carefully. Songs like "If the Lord Wasn't Walking by My Side" and "I've Never Been This Homesick Before" carry a melodic quality that doesn't settle for pretty. They reach for something more specific than beauty, a particular ache or a particular comfort that Slaughter seemed to locate without strain. "What a Precious Friend Is He" belongs in the same category, built for congregational singing yet structured to feel like a private conversation at the same time. These weren't written from a professional distance. They came from someone who had prayed the things he was composing, someone whose relationship with Christ served as the source of the music rather than merely its subject. Bill Gaither's tribute after Slaughter passed described missing his stories, his laughter, and his musical talent in the same sentence, and that combination tells you something real about how their friendship functioned across several decades. It wasn't a professional association with warmth layered around the edges. It was a genuine brotherhood that happened to produce remarkable music together, and the music was almost a byproduct of the relationship rather than its purpose. Gloria Gaither wrote separately about Slaughter's humility, his passion for the gospel, and the specific quality of joy he carried into every room he entered, and her words read like someone describing a person they actually knew rather than a performer they admired from a respectful distance. That distinction comes through clearly in how she wrote it. David Phelps, a longtime member of the Gaither vocal band, described Heaven gaining both a legendary pianist and a kind soul when Slaughter passed, and that pairing of words matters more than it might first appear. Kind soul is not how people typically describe legends. It is how they describe someone whose character matched their gifts, and in gospel music, that alignment is what separates a talented performer from a genuine minister of the faith. Mark Lowry, who knew Slaughter personally, put it plainly: Slaughter could bring any audience to its feet with his piano playing, but his love for the Lord showed through in everything he did. The playing was extraordinary by any standard, The man behind the playing was authentic. And worship communities, congregations that gather around Christian music week after week, carry a finely tuned sensitivity to the difference between someone who knows about God and someone who actually knows God. Slaughter gave 60 years to gospel ministry, which adds up to roughly 21,900 days of choosing faithfulness over convenience and service over spotlight. He spent most of those days away from the kind of fame that followed other musicians of comparable talent. No personal brand was being constructed. No chart positions were being tracked as a measure of worth. The measure he used for success was changed hearts, and that choice kept him in the background of an industry he helped construct from the ground up. The irony is that this posture toward ministry created something far more durable than fame would have produced. Songs still moving through churches across America and around the world long after the recording sessions that captured them were finished, still finding new ears, still locating something true in people hearing them for the very first time. The debt that contemporary Christian worship music owes to Henry Slaughter doesn't appear in award histories or mainstream recognition, but it lives inside the music itself, embedded in the arrangements and the harmonic sensibility of musicians who learned from musicians who learned from him. His approach to the piano influenced a generation that went on to shape another generation, creating an inheritance that flows through gospel music's current sound, whether its current practitioners know his name or not. His commitment to lyrical depth raised the expectation for what gospel songwriting was capable of achieving. When he combined technical excellence at the instrument with authentic spiritual conviction, he wasn't attempting to establish a standard. He was simply playing what moved through him honestly. But the standard formed regardless, and the musicians who followed had to decide whether to reach for it. What made his songs outlast their era is the same quality that allows any art to survive its moment. They came from a real place rather than a calculated one. Slaughter wasn't writing toward a market or shaping lyrics around what audiences were responding to that season. He was writing from an encounter, from an ongoing relationship with the God his music consistently pointed people toward, and that origin shows in the songs themselves if you listen past the melody. Music built that way doesn't age in the same pattern that manufactured music does. Decades after he composed them, those songs still located something true in the people hearing them, and that is ultimately the only measure of gospel music that carries any permanent weight. Entertainment fades on its own timetable. Ministry carries forward regardless of the calendar. The character that colleagues consistently described when talking about Slaughter held the same qualities across every account. He celebrated other musicians' successes without competing with them, stayed open to learning long after he could have stopped, invested in people rather than accumulating platform, and lived privately in alignment with what he delivered publicly. That last quality, the coherence between stage and daily life, is rarer than talent in any field. In gospel music especially, in worship communities where authenticity is the currency that trust runs on, it is the quality that separates genuine ministry from performance. Slaughter's was genuine, and everyone who spent extended time with him understood that quickly, without needing it explained. 60 years, January 9, 1927 through 2025. A life that moved from a piano bench in Roxborough, North Carolina, to homecoming stages and hymnal pages and the playlists of believers across multiple generations, and it moved there not through self-promotion, but through consistent, faithful service to something larger than the man delivering it. When Gaither called Slaughter irreplaceable, he wasn't referring to raw musical talent, because talent surfaces again in new people with every generation. He was describing the specific combination of character and calling that Slaughter carried, the thing that cannot be replicated once it's gone, only honored by those who knew him and those who encounter his music now for the first time. The songs remain. Worship leaders are drawing from arrangements Slaughter built, and the congregations they lead may never learn whose hands shape the harmonies underneath them. Henry Slaughter would have considered that a complete outcome, exactly what the music was always designed to accomplish: serve the people in the room, point them toward Christ, and dissolve into the worship it was created to carry forward.